Hey, Hockey Nuts. Wayne here. I just wanted to do a video that is addressing a couple of comments that have come in over the past couple of days. Um, I've been putting up a lot of videos over the past week outside of the podcast, and they're actually starting to gain some traction for whatever reason. Really, our YouTube channel hasn't done a whole lot in the past. We're primarily a podcast. Anyway, I'll get to that in a minute. But a lot of the comments are concerning how I'm copying the hockey guy. I'm, hockey guy 2.0 and so on and so on. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit. First and foremost, yes, I know who the hockey guy is. I've watched many of his videos. I actually respect the guy. He's very smart. He's extremely talented, and I enjoy his channel. Quite frankly, I really do. But at the same time, yes, he uses a whiteboard. That's generally how he does his communicating for the most part, and sometimes he talks directly to the camera as much as I am right now. But just because he's got a whiteboard, I've got a whiteboard, doesn't make me copying him. At least I don't feel that way. Because here's the deal. My channel was created probably a year and a half ago. It was actually created after a friend of mine and I started doing a podcast. When we started, we've been doing our podcast for about a season and a half now. We started in the summer of, not this past summer, but the summer before. So the summer leading into the 16-17 season is when we started doing our weekly podcast. And we've been doing it week after week after week for a year and a half now. And it's just him and I, a friend of mine, and I talking hockey every week. And shortly after probably a month or two after we started doing the podcast, I decided to expand it into YouTube and actually do kind of a live stream every time we do the podcast, every time we record the podcast, to go ahead and live stream it. And which we've done for week after week after week. If you go back and look at all the videos on this channel, you'll see, going back well over a year, there are pretty much just nothing but us doing the podcast. And each week I put up two versions of the podcast. I put up an audio-only version for those people, because I have heard feedback from the past that people do have YouTube on like in the background, or they have it on their phone, but they're not really watching it, but they're listening. So I wanted to give that an option for those people who want to use YouTube in that manner and still listen to our podcast through YouTube, but not necessarily watch it. And then, of course, we do record and live stream the video of us recording the podcast each week on YouTube. You'll find those videos going back year after year after year. Now, when we started this podcast, I had no clue who the hockey guy was. No freaking clue whatsoever. I had not seen any of his content, had not seen any of his channels. All we wanted to do was to do a weekly hockey podcast, primarily because him and I both live in the Carolinas in the U.S., and sports radio in this area is pretty much completely devoid of hockey. Yeah, they talk Hurricanes, but for every hour of programming, local sports talk programming they do is maybe 5 minutes of Hurricanes talk, and that's it. And when the local sports station go to national, like Fox Radio or ESPN or so on like that, you know what you get if you've listened to those networks before. It's football, basketball, baseball, almost exclusively, and a tiny bit of hockey, if you get that at all. So Steve and I decided to do the podcast as a way to help hockey fans keep more up to date with what's going on around the hockey world. And that's what our podcast is. For a couple of hours each week, him and I get together and we discuss all the news of the past week. Well, over the year and a half has gone by, our podcast seems to get longer and longer because we're finding more and more content. There's more and more stuff we want to talk about each week, and I found myself wanting to expand that content. And over the past couple of weeks is kind of what I've been attempting to do, and I'm doing a lot of experimenting with different ways of communicating some of this. But I've really been trying to expand on that, and not for the podcast listeners per se, because we have a loyal following of podcast listeners. We've actually got a pretty good audience going over on the podcast. But over here in the YouTube is where I wanted to put the additional stuff that I wanted to do. And I've experimented with a few ways of doing it. And over the past week or two, I've been doing the whiteboard thing, which obviously some of you don't like me doing because you think I'm copying the hockey guy. So, and if the hockey guy is seeing this, I'm sorry, hockey guy. Shannon, I know your name, but I like his stuff. Yes, I'm modeling his stuff, but I'm certainly not copying. He's got his opinions. I've got my opinions. We both have our own thing going on. And I just want to come out there and say, look, yes, I'm doing the whiteboard occasionally, but as you can see from the video that I put up tonight, I'm also experimenting with kind of a digital whiteboard where I go on and I have this writing tablet here. Let me pull it up so you can see it. This electronic writing tablet that I'm using that I can actually, and I can even demonstrate that for you. Actually, let me pull up my screen here. And I can demonstrate the fact that I can do, let's pull up Sketchpad, all right? So I can just simply, I could even do, turn on my pen here. I could even do coaching diagrams if I wanted to. Now, some of the things that I might want to do, some of the things I may want to do in the future is possibly do some stuff hockey related, get a good background. Obviously, I'm drawing a rink here. But as you can see, there's many, many different things I can do with the stuff that I have. That was a poor circle. Anyway, so that's just an example of some of the things that that I'm experimenting with, and some of the ways that I would like to communicate the information that I want to do. So, obviously there's plenty of room on YouTube for everybody. In some of the searching in the past, I've basically found, and I could be wrong, I don't know, I've found basically 2 channels that are talking all teams, all hockey. And of course, you guys all know probably who they are. One is the hockey guy. The other one is Post to Post. I know Post to Post has this great big expansive collection of jerseys that he hangs behind him, and he occasionally uses green screen. And I'm not kind of a big thing on, that's for them to do. I enjoy his content too. And I like the Post to Post guys. I like the hockey guys. I watch both channels, and I'm just trying to offer more perspective out there, more choices for everybody. There's plenty of room for everybody to get along on this thing. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about and concerning this channel. And as far as where we're going, I'm going to continue doing this channel as a way to give my podcast listeners and our YouTube channel followers a way to consume more hockey content. Like it, you can, if you don't like it, you can go back to the hockey guy. You can go back to Post. You can watch those guys. If you do, you can subscribe to all 3 of us. There's nothing stopping you from doing it. So, so I appreciate it if you want to subscribe and follow some of the stuff that I'm doing. And if you don't, there's no need to give me all kinds of grief about it in the comments, because it doesn't serve any purpose. If you like me, great. If you don't, there's plenty of other channels out there available. So So anyway, that's the only thing I want to talk about that. Now, in the upcoming couple of weeks, now, or just to tell you a little bit about myself, I have alluded to the fact in many of my videos that we've got, I've got a full-time job that I've got to continue to work at because this YouTube thing is just a hobby for me. I'm light years away from ever being able to monetize anything here, so you're not going to see any of that from me for a long time. And even when I do, or if I do get to, I'm fortunate enough to grow to that point, it's still going to be, long time before I can quit my full-time job. Not that that's even a goal of mine. I'm doing this for fun. That's the bottom line right now. So I like talking hockey. I like engaging with our listeners and our fans. And occasionally I will try to get Steve on in some of these talks too. Steve is the podcast co-host that works with me. And the reason he hasn't been able to do anything extra with me is him and I, we both have our own jobs. We both work differing schedules. And all we can muster right now is that 1-2 hour window every week for us to get together. Outside of that, we just can't seem to. We text back and forth, but we don't get together outside of the weekly podcast. So, but I know we're leaving some of our listeners wanting more. So, and that's what my goal is for this channel this is a place for our podcast listeners and our YouTube audience to get that additional information that they're not getting from the podcast. So that's essentially my goal here. Yes, I'll be using the whiteboard. No, I won't be using it for every single video. As you can see, I'm experimenting with other ways of doing things, as I just previously shown. And I may even find other ways on top of that to display things. The challenge is to find ways of getting you the information that I want to talk about at the same time without violating any copyright laws, all that garbage. So if I were to just simply pull up a website and say boom, 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 I've seen takedown notices come through, not on my channel, but others, for just simply displaying someone else's website. So I'm trying to avoid that. And, I'm trying to find ways to, kind of play within the rules, I guess, is the best way of saying it. So I know I'm rambling on here, but I'll wrap it up by just simply saying, look, if you like us, great. Subscribe to the channel, like our videos. If you don't like us, you can always move on. That's just the bottom line, the way it is. So click subscribe if you want to see more content from us. And the more subscribers we get, the more I'm motivated to do more. So, but in the meantime, in the next 8 days or so, I talked about it in the last video, I'm working every single day for 8 days straight. So I won't be able to do as much content on the days that I'm working. And in addition to my full-time 40-hour-a-week job, I also referee hockey games myself as kind of a side gig, because that too makes me money. So I'm busy with that as well. So I'm going to do as much YouTube as I can. There's no possible way that I can match what the hockey guy is doing, because he's putting out hours and hours and hours of content each week. I can't keep up with that. I just have too much going on in my own life, in terms of jobs and part-time jobs and refereeing and everything else going on. So, and that stuff, quite frankly, has to come first. This is just something I'm doing with my spare time, and I'm enjoying it. I love talking about hockey. I love seeing your comments about hockey itself. The trolling stuff, I'm just going to ignore that stuff. I'm not even going to address it. So you're not going to get any reaction out of me other than me addressing some of the concerns that were brought up over the past couple of weeks. And anyway, it is what it is. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm doing what I like to do. And if you like it, great. If not, there's always other channels out there. All right. So until the next one, have a nice day.